we are tracking Sandy. This potentially historic storm is battering parts of the East Coast, kicking up the surf, whipping up the winds, and dumping plenty of rain. We've got the very latest on this storm straight ahead.
And, you really should be preparing now for the arrival of Sandy. The word from our experts here and the meteorologists would all concur that this really is your last day to do this. By tomorrow, that storm, it is going to be on your front door, and it is going to be far too late to try to get some of these things done. And good afternoon to some of you in the East. Thank you so much for joining us here on the special version of Weekend Now, Tracking Sandy. I'm Heather Tesh.
And I'm Vivian Brown. Now, the Weather Channel is on around the clock, of course, to keep you ahead of this storm. That includes all of us here at the Weather Channel, the headquarters studios in Atlanta, and our team, of course, out in the field.
And, they are fanned out throughout the East. Jim Cantori's in Battery Park City, that's in New York, and Reynolds Wolf is in Mystic, Connecticut. And, Vivian, I know you have some of the latest details, too.
Yes, of course, we will hear from you guys throughout the hour, of course. But first, let's get the very latest on the evacuation orders that are now in effect on Zone A in New York City. Now, that includes about 350,000 people. Officials will shut down the entire New York mass transit system at 7 o'clock tonight. In addition to that, New York City public schools are closed tomorrow.
That's right. And, as far as that evacuation zone, too, we're talking almost 400,000 people affected. And, according to flight tracking company, FlightAware.com, more than 3,200 flights have been canceled ahead of Sandy. Amtrak also canceling some of their services today. And, we're going to continue, too, to find some delays for those flights that are ongoing. We've been seeing that, reports of that this morning, too.
Well, let's show you the overall impacts now from Sandy, because we're talking about over 500 million people, 50 million people impacted, of course. Where you see the red zone here, or the red shaded area, that's where you need to take action right now, because 24 hours from now, things will look totally different, and you might actually be shut in by then, because those winds will be increasing and the rains will be increasing as well. And the reason we're saying take action is because power could be out once those winds really start to blow the huge trees over power lines, and we could be without electricity for days.
That's true. And, also there was a study done that on Hurricane Sandy, and there is an expectation of 10 million people, or customers, I should say, could be losing power, and you can see how widespread that area is.
Okay, so let's get some of the latest information on Sandy, where it is right now, and exactly how it will impact the Northeast from our hurricane specialist, Carl Parker, in our Global Forecast Center.
Well, guys, we've been referring to the storm as an historic storm, and that really is not hyperbole. I want to show you a graphic showing the winds that are just above the surface. This is Tuesday morning, and you can see where the very strong winds are. This is courtesy of Right Weather. Look at the size of the impact of this storm. So you're talking about getting out here to the lakes, to Wisconsin, down through the Ohio Valley, through the southeast, all of the Northeast enveloped by the influence of this storm. It really is going to be absolutely enormous when it comes in. A 75-mile-per-hour storm that really doesn't tell the story. Look at the pressure, 951. That is quite low. That is comparable to some of the greatest storms that we have seen in Northeast history. And there's a look at the area of strong winds, which comes in tomorrow morning. So things really going downhill tomorrow morning. Winds may begin to gust to near hurricane force or to hurricane force, and we expect that to really come in through the evening hours and the overnight hours across the 95 corridor, Boston getting down into New York and Philly, and into D.C. Tremendous wind. That goes right through Tuesday morning, so a long duration event. And even while all of this is occurring inland, you're going to see a tremendous push of water up into the coast there, and that's why we're so concerned about storm surge flooding and tremendous wave action. There's going to be coastal flooding. It will be a mess along the coastline, and it's not going to let up. And on top of all of that, winds, by the way, finally letting up here on Wednesday. On top of all of that, you've got a tremendous amount of rain potential. Could be several inches of rainfall in the Mid-Atlantic region, even double-digit rainfall totals in some isolated areas. All right, let's bring in Jim Cantori. He's reporting on the storm for us in the Battery in New York. And Jim, I know you were there for Irene, and this could be worse than what we saw during Irene, and in fact, it's starting to look that way.
That's what all the predictions are saying. I love it when the atmosphere gives us a hint of what it's going to do, Carl. We saw that this morning already at Sandy Hook, where tides are running 2.5 feet above where they normally would be because of this astronomical high tide. We see, unfortunately, the flooding that's going on right now in South Florida because of this astronomical high tide. So that has to be factored into this situation. So many of the storm surge models now predicting a 6 to 11 foot rise, and that has allowed the mayor to now issue the evacuation order for Zone A, about 375,000 people to be affected in through here in some of the low-lying areas, including where we are here in Battery Park City. And for example, if you're taking that surge into account in mean low water, you're going to have the water pretty much over this sidewalk up and through here. We had that with Irene, and it will be potentially even higher than that. And unfortunately, there are lower areas than where I'm just standing here. There are many areas here where there are hotels and even residential areas that will have to be evacuated. And again, a lot of that 375,000 is in this zone area. The park is planning on closing at about 11 o'clock this afternoon. There will be no schools, public schools in New York City tomorrow at all, and that's not surprising. I wouldn't be surprised if that was probably the case on Tuesday as well, but they'll decide that a little bit later on. And the seas are just going to be tremendous with 30-foot waves off the coast and seas possibly as high as 15 feet coming into the south shore of Long Island. And Carl, we talked about what's going on here with the storm coming ashore. The Great Lakes are going to have huge waves with the fetch over the Great Lakes, some as high as 20 feet in Chicago and even Cleveland as well. So wow, this is just the biggest thing I've ever certainly covered in my entire career, and it's going to cover a lot of real estate before it's done. Ladies, back to you.